Welcome to the book of Ruth. Ruth is a wonderful story of God's love as shown through his people. Ruth is one of two books in the Bible named for women. The other is the book of Esther. We are not exactly sure when the book of Ruth was written, but we know, according to the text, it was sometime around the time of the book of Judges. Additional clues include the fact that a famine is mentioned in the book of Ruth. So therefore we know it was also around a time of a famine, and there is a famine mentioned in the book of Judges, so that is possible. The end of the book of Ruth gives a genealogy of David. So while the events took time in the book of Judges, we know that the book was written later than that. Hebrew scholars consider the book of Ruth to be a very beautifully written narrative, which tells a complete story from beginning to end. It is a story of trial and hardship. It is a story of sorrow. It is also a story of redemption and of joy. And in the end, it teaches us how to trust the Lord. It teaches us how we in the body of Christ can and should treat one another to mirror the way that God treats us. As we look at the book of Ruth, we are going to not only see how God's love is poured out in the story to different individuals through the characters in this narrative, but also we are going to learn more about God and his love and his faithfulness, even when things seem dark and difficult. This is challenging because we know the end of Ruth turns out well. We will have to remember and put ourselves in the shoes of Ruth and Naomi in particular, and understand that there was a lot of suffering and trial that led up to that. The book is trying to show us that this is a story about difficulty that is overcome. It's not a Pollyanna story about anybody having a perfect life. Rather, it is about persevering through trials. And that is one reason why the book of Ruth is still so relevant today. We all still face trials, but we need some hope to hold on to. We need to remember who God is, number one, and then remember who we are, because that helps us then to be purveyors of that hope, ambassadors of that hope to others who are going through a difficult situation, particularly to those in the body of Christ. And you notice that I keep saying that this is, after all, a story about the body of believers. In this case, in that time, it was the body of believers who believed in the God of Abraham, Jacob, and Isaac. And this is important, as we are going to see. Ruth is among that number. Oftentimes people call Ruth an outsider. The fact is, she was no longer an outsider. She was an insider because she accepted that God, Yahweh, was the one true God, and she gave up her gods and the gods of her family and her ancestors. So this whole story really revolves around a group of people caring for one another, and we can get good examples there about caring for one another in the body of Christ. As the book of Ruth will end, we will see more about Naomi and her journey, and how Ruth, although being younger, was able to help Naomi have such joy and happiness. We will learn about the role of community. We'll see throughout Ruth the role of the community in blessing both Ruth and Boaz, and then later their union, and later their child. The community here is an important representation, again, of a part of the body of Christ and of the importance of the body of Christ one to another. I'm so excited for you to join me as we look at this journey across a desert land twice, and how Ruth and Naomi were able to deal with that effectively.